Hello, um, my name is Zani, and I'm a Burmese scholar exiled in UK, and I'm also a human rights activist, not just simply working for the end to Myanmar or my own country's genocide against Rohingya people. First, I want to thank the Islamic Human Rights Commission for giving me the opportunity to explain my thoughts on um, genocide in general and the Burmese genocide, which is ongoing against the Rohingya people in Western Myanmar specifically. Firstly, a lot of people tend to look at the Burmese genocide um, and the concerns, coming from the OIC or Islamic countries as simply Buddhist versus Muslim issue. Uh, Even some of the people that should know better would look at the concerns expressed by, say, Turkey or Iran or the OIC as a whole as simply uh, you know um, concern coming from fellow Muslims, uh, with regards to the persecution of fellow Muslims named Rohingya from Burma or Myanmar. But I think I want to take issue with that because I was raised in a Buddhist environment, Buddhist family, and I engage in a meditation, mindfulness practice as a matter of habit. Uh, but I speak out against my own country's genocide um, regarding the Rohingya because genocides are crimes against humanity. Whoever the perpetrators, whoever the victims, uh, these crimes and the sufferings that they induce transcend religions, cultures, and should transcend politics, economics, and a whole lot of other factors. But sadly, that's not the case. But firstly, genocide needs to be understood as organized state crimes committed by essentially governments with often with the collaboration of so-called civil society organizations, religious communities, and whatnot. And that's true universally. The Burmese genocide that the Rohingyas have suffered over a decade, which my research colleague and wife Natalie Brenham and I called the slow burning genocide or the slow genocide because it has been going on for essentially over 40 years since 1970s. Um, the, no two genocides um, look alike, and the genocides don't have to, um, assume uh, pr- exact forms. In other words, we don't need to find gas chambers and extermination camps and forced labor camps the way uh, we would find among the remnants of the Holocaust or the Nazi genocide of the European Jews and other victims um, that took place between mid 1930s until 1945 when the Soviet Red Army and the Allied forces completely defeated the Third Reich or the Nazi Germany. But they do have to have the intention or shared or common intention that perpetrators really want to wipe out or exterminate um, a population that has distinct characteristics such as nationality, their own religion or faith, um, they have their own ethnic identity or racial identity, and some would say political identity as another form of group identity that should qualify if the group suffer, um, you know, the intentional destruction, such as communist or the capitalist class. And so, if a state or government attempts to wipe out, in whole or in part, the targeted community of national, racial, ethnic, um, and religious community, then that qualifies as a policy of genocide or acts of genocide. Uh, so, in the case of Burma, we have this community, predominantly Muslim. There are also a small number of Hindus and Christians among the Rohingyas, but they are largely a Muslim community that lived, along the borders of current-day Bangladesh and current-day Myanmar. Just to remind ourselves that these national boundaries came into existence only at the end of the Second World War. These were basically fictional boundaries, but geomorphologically, meaning the geographic features, the mountain ranges, the rivers, and land boundaries and swamps. They don't have natural boundaries. These are political products. And so before Burma became Burma in 1948, as the result of British Empire's dissolution of parts of the Indian subcontinent and Burma as the colonial possessions. The Rohingya people lived on both sides of the what is today Western Myanmar. And then by the same token, they are co-inhabitants, Rakhine Buddhists, Rakhines who are predominantly Buddhists. They too, settle along the Burmese and Bangladeshi borders. And so the problem with the Rohingya, insofar as the Burmese military and the military planners and strategists are concerned, are seen as a threat to Burmese, predominantly Burmese Buddhist way of life, for the Rakhines, for the majority Buddhist society as a whole. The military planners see the Rohingyas as a threat to military or national security. Let me explain. We have about 16 different pockets or types of Muslim people in Burma. If you look at their migratory patterns, type of Islamic, religion they practice, as Sunni, Shia, and others. Of the 16 or so different Muslim communities that are scattered across or throughout Burma, the Rohingyas are the only Muslim community that are heavily concentrated in a single geographic location, which they share as ancestral land with their Buddhist brethren, known as Rakhines. Yeah. And once, before Burma became independent in 1948, they had a shared identity, a shared base, which was not based on blood or religion, so-called blood or religion. And that identity was Arakanese. They belonged to an old political kingdom named Arakan. And so they were all Arakanese. But as a result of Burma's independence, the new identities emerged, and the Rohingya reclaim what they consider their old historical pre-colonial identity as Rohingya. And the Rohingyas also happen to live along the Bangladeshi-Burmese border. And Bangladesh, as you know, is one of the most densely populated and one of the largest Muslim countries in the world after um, Indonesia. Bangladesh is about 160 million people, predominantly Muslim. And land, in terms of land area, Bangladesh is, twice as small as Myanmar or Burma. And a lot of the Bangladeshi areas are swamp and rivers. And so, from the Burmese military perspective, this population ratio, the food supplies, the landmass that Bangladesh has, in relation to population, the Burmese military consider these factors as something that would trigger Bangladeshi government to implement policies of encouraging or facilitating a large segment of a Muslim Bengali Bangladeshi population across the border into Burma. So they came up with this metaphor. Um, you know, the Rohingya areas along the Bangladeshi Myanmar borders are termed Western Gate. Mind you, we are, as a country, situated, along the borders with five other countries: India, China, Laos, Thailand, and a long, um, you know, coastline, over 1,300 miles long coastline, um, in the Indian Ocean or the Bay of Bengal. And Bangladesh is the fifth country, of course. And of all these, long borders within which Burma exists, only the Myanmar Bangladeshi border is described or referred to as Western Gate, and no other, um, the Burmese boundaries are described as such. And lastly, the third factor, that relates to the history, because Western Myanmar was uh, first annexed by the British in 1826 as part of the British Empire, the India at the time, by the East India Company. The Burmese were extremely resentful of the fact that the Muslim and other Indian populations immigrated into Burma, or what was then a British Burma, a third of Burmese territory. They felt that the Rohingya presence was the result of the British colonial policy. But that actually misses the point. The point is the pre-colonial, territories or political systems um, shared a lot of fluid borders, and the population migration took place in all directions. And it was not just the Rohingyas that came to Burma. The before and after, the British colonial rule. But as a matter of fact, Professor Amartya Sen, the renowned philosopher and economist of Bangladeshi or Bengali ancestry, now at Harvard, put it very succinctly. The Rohingyas did not come to Burma. Burma came to Rohingya. What he meant to say is that Rohingya existed in their own ancestral pocket, but the Burmese, state was formed and swallowed that Rohingya, the geographic ancestral pocket. And so you see, the Burmese state and the Burmese popular imagination have invented the Rohingya, the entire population of predominantly Muslim people, residential in Western Myanmar, as invaders. when you have a population that has been framed as a threat to national security, and invaders, unwelcome, quote unquote, illegal immigrants, or viruses in today's pandemic discourse. Yeah? When a population such as Rohingya that really belong in their own ancestral land uh, is presented in such a racist light, there's only one short step uh, from the actual state committing a genocide. That is, a policy of persecution designed to exterminate the Rohingya population, either in whole or in part. And finally, genocides are all state organized, systematic, preordained crimes. Genocides are committed as a matter of national policy. Whether you look at Nazi Germany in the 1930s, or Rwanda, or Serbia and Bosnian Serbs in Bosnia, these are all state crimes. As such, they cannot be stopped by human rights organizations or NGOs and other humanitarians or activists on the ground, such as myself and the Free Rohingya Coalition that I work with and I co-founded. So the genocides can only be stopped by the intervention of either the international interstate system, such as the United Nations, or a powerful neighboring state. But neither is happening in the case of Rohingya. Therefore, the slow genocide of Rohingya has continued on, and the Rohingyas today find themselves utterly homeless, countryless, and there are more Rohingyas today living or driven out and having survived the genocidal purges since 1978 than there are Rohingyas inside their own ancestral land. So therefore, it is so crucial that we keep demanding that international system of governments, such as the United Nations and other conscientious governments, should step in to end this ongoing genocide.